Hello and welcome to New World Comics Podcast. I am Buck Berlin, head operator of the store, owner, operator, whatever you all want to call me. Not with us this week, Stephanie Cerny. She was unable to make it.
I feel like this is a personal slight. I feel like this is at me. She's not here at me.
You know, there are many personal slights towards you. This is just not one of them.
All right.
I'll fill you in on the others.
We got a whole hour, right?
Helping run the show is the voice of God around here, Brad Reed from Nerds to Men podcast. You can see that every week. All the same places you can see this New World podcast. He's, running everything and chiming in whenever, I ramble on or do whatever that needs to stop.
Blessed be. But.
Yeah. So, you can check us out on Nerds to Men each week. Join with me this week on the New World podcast is BradChad Porter.
Hey.
Hi.
I'm very excited to be here.
You should be.
I have lots to say.
Oh, do you?
Almost never.
No.
So, here to sway us with your financial, political, and religious views?
Absolutely.
Awesome, yeah.
I will be repellent from minute one. I will say the most controversial things I think, and we'll see if we can shut this sucker down.
Fair enough. No. So, that's dumb. So for those that don't really know, you and I are like very good close friends.
Yeah.
And
It's been like 10 years now.
It has been. And we got weirdly close. There's no real good reason for it. It just kind of did.
No, I mean, people just click.
Yeah.
Well, there's I feel like the more time we spend talking, I mean, if we really tried to figure it out, we might ruin it.
Yeah.
We might find that there's nothing there.
Well, because most people I click with usually on like the comic level or like movies or something, and you and I just personalities are just like
yeah. It doesn't really have we don't share a lot of the same interests.
Yeah, it's just it just works.
We just work. We
Yeah.
just work. It just is.
So I guess for those who really really don't know, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
I'm BradChad Porter. I produce comedy locally here in Oklahoma City, and I also perform comedy when people are willing to pay me to do so.
Ooh.
There's less of that.
So you do the OKC comedy, like you what, own it? You are the
I mean, yeah. As much as there's something to own, yeah.
Yeah. There's blue sky involved.
But I have a lot of partners on projects. Cameron Buckholtz I work with a lot. Josh Lathy I work with a lot. But yeah,
and we'll get into that. But I mean, like, it's at the end of the day, you are OKC comedy, and then everyone else helps out as much as you can, right?
I would say if in as much as it can be defined that way.
Okay.
Cameron Buckholtz and I own OKC comedy.
Okay.
Cameron Buckholtz and I are OKC comedy.
Fair enough. Okay.
But Spencer Hicks started OKC comedy with us. He's just real busy with a state senator for a wife and a bajillion kids, and
living the dream, you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And then a ton of other people who have moved away from us as far as they could get.
Interesting, and we'll come back to that idea soon. But first off, why comedy?
I always wanted to do comedy when I was 4. I think my mother tells the story. I don't remember it, but my mother tells the story that I one time said to her when I was 4 years old that I was going to replace Johnny Carson as the host of the Tonight Show. That didn't happen
yet.
I mean,
if Jay Leno,
they filled that job a couple of times, and I've got nary a phone call.
If Jay Leno can come back again, you have you're in.
Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So I've been interested in comedy. My mom used to let me. My bedtime was like 9:30, and I would go to bed, And I don't know what the ritual was to it. I don't know why we went through the ritual, but at 9:30 I was to go to bed. That was my bedtime.
Yeah.
At 10:30, listening to the television in the living
kinda
room, I
winding
could
down,
hear the local news wrapping up. I would, I guess, sneak down into the living room,
Yeah.
and my mom would let me watch Johnny's monologue, and then she would let me and if there was a stand-up comic, I could wait and watch the comic.
Oh, that's really cool.
But if there was no comic on the show, I had to go to bed.
So like anytime it was like a cool band or whatever, you're like, nope.
Yeah, I didn't care about any of that anyway. I will. There were several. I had very showbiz conversations with my mom about the difference between, doing a set and panel.
Wow.
Like, okay, well, but Don Rickles is a comic. It doesn't matter if he's not going to do comedy. He's a comic. I should get to stand and watch.
Because he's going to be good.
Because he's a comic.
Yeah.
The rule is I get to see the comics.
Huh.
But, yeah.
Interesting.
We had a lot of those conversations. And I grew up watching Saturday Night Live with my mom. And, I just always sort of felt like I was headed in that direction.
You didn't always take the direct route to comedy.
I did not. Nope.
Yeah. So you were a pastor for a little.
I was a minister for 12 years.
Yeah.
I started in youth ministry and then took over a church in Yukon, Oklahoma.
Did you ever
pastored a church for 4 years before I realized this is quite literally the worst job on the planet.
Interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't do it today to save my life. If someone pointed a gun at me and was like, you got to go back and pastor a church for 4 years, I'd be like, it's been good.
Huh.
I'm ready.
When you were doing it, did you ever try to sneak in jokes and do any?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I tried to be funny. And I'll tell you what, the very first time I tried stand-up, I was still technically a minister. It was the last year that I was a minister, and I was sort of wrapping it up and figuring out what my next steps would be. And I did my first open mic, and I realized kind of walking up on, because in front of people 3 times a week for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up, I was headed on stage and realized, nope, this is different. This is going to go bad. I know what this is now, and this isn't the same, and it's going to go bad. And it did. And I didn't do comedy again for 1.5 years.
Interesting. Man, yeah.
It was traumatic.
I remember the first time I met you was like your 3rd or 4th time into it, because James Nim had finally talked me into getting out and seeing him, because he and I go way back in high school. He's one of my oldest friends, and me, I get super busy up here, and then whenever the doors close, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
I love seeing everyone up here, but to get me to go to a function outside of here
it takes some doing.
Oh man, yeah. So finally, I catch him on his, I think, 3rd or 4th outing, and it's one of your first.
We started around the same time.
Yeah. So I remember him, coming off stage and introducing me to it was you and Leah and a whole bunch of the people there.
Yeah.
And then he did very well for being his 3rd or 4th. I was surprised. And then you came off, and then everyone was like, "Oh my God, you were the greatest! Oh my God, you're just so good!" I was like, "Man, I'm so sorry. They're all just lying to you." And we struck up the conversation then, and you're always anytime James got pulled off and I couldn't talk to him, and I'd be stranded in this group of comedians. I'd always, go talk to you. Yeah.
Well, it's become a trope. It's a thing that people say maybe too much now. But if you're being a comic, if I walk into a party and I find another comic there, all of a sudden I don't feel like, oh, I don't have to be weird. I can.
Yeah.
I don't. I can go have. I know. So okay. So you just sort of gravitate to each other, and I feel like you probably have always just been like having never done stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
you could get away with acting like you do
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I've been to so many functions
incognito.
that like all the comedians will like invite me out to, and I'll show up to a thing and sit down, and usually like I'll sit down with like you or a couple other the I guess old timers in the in the scene.
Yep.
And like the new
That's
kids will come
appropriate.
around, and I always love like anytime everyone kind of runs out of stuff, I'll take over, and I usually start doing the I'm a comics comic, and I just see everyone else just kind of like but all the kids that don't really know, like,
Right.
oh really?
Oh, are you?
Tell us more. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I always feel like a dilettante thrown in with that, because like the most I've ever done was like one of the Nimbus fairy tale shows.
Told a story.
Like I've never done the stand up thing.
Yeah.
I've written a few things for you that like being in the position that I'm in, I can't really tell those things, but you've graciously
Yeah, absolutely.
said them for me, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely, I'll try.
Yeah.
I have no shame about it. I have no shame about it at all. If something strikes me as workable, I'll try it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thrown some to James Nam, and he said that they were unfortunately funny. He says, I hate doing them. They're the worst jokes. It's terrible taste. It's all this awful stuff.
I
But they get laughs.
I don't hate it when somebody gives. I don't mind getting a laugh from somebody else's line. Somebody comes along and gives you a tag to your joke.
It's not. It wasn't that he hated.
Yeah.
Not truly getting. It was the why it got a laugh.
That's what I was about to say.
Which is why it's why Flowers and I started the Josh Flowers Facebook page. It's so
you can say the terrible things and not be connected to it.
Well, because all of them are Josh Flowers, 100%. All of them.
But I don't mind using other, like if someone gives me a tag to a joke, like I've been doing a joke and somebody hears it and they're like, what you should say is.
Yeah.
And I'll try it, and if it works, I'll be like, oh, okay. And that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
First of all, it hardly ever happens. But that doesn't bother me. There are certain people, for some reason, when they give me, a little punch at the end of a thing or whatever.
Yeah.
There are certain people. Derek Smith is a good friend of mine. I've known him, for 10 years. He moved to Chicago. He's one of my best friends in the world.
How dare he move away?
I hate it. Hate it when he gives me everything he's ever said you should ... I do it and it works and I hate it and I don't know why. If you you can punch up one of my jokes and I'm like, hey, thanks, you fixed it. He does it and it just goes all over me.
Interesting.
Every time it comes out of my mouth,
it's probably a respect
fills me
thing.
with
You just respect him more than me.
I'm not sure that's what it is.
That is exactly what that is. That's what that brief silence was. that was the silent truth.
It was something setting in.
It's the stupidest thing. Anyway, so next question I have for you: what's the hardest part of doing this?
I don't know. I found out that about 85% of this job is moving chairs. And then another 10% of it is having long conversations with people that you don't want to talk to.
Okay.
About stuff that you don't care about. And then about 5% of it is being on stage having fun.
Okay, so that other point, the conversations that you don't want, like, this is absolutely my favorite thing I do. Like, owning the store, running all this is amazing. Although, at least once a week, there's a conversation that
just dying to get out of.
Yeah, and sometimes like someone will just say something like super weird, and then it's just kind of dealing with that for the next few seconds, and sometimes like you're locked in.
Yeah,
like,
and I could see where you're going to see a lot of people
Yeah.
come into the store, and you're going to see a lot of nerds come into the store with their own sort of obsessions.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, half the time that's awesome because there are a lot of my same obsessions.
Right,
But,
exactly.
but like, like for example, there was one guy today that was, like collected, figures and this stuff, and was like, "Hey, do you have any Wonder Woman? Do you have any? I only collect the ones with brown eyes." And then he stared at me and stared at me, stared at me, and then he left. Yeah. So it was just kind of that. And
But
then
there's a rhythm to being a nerd.
well, yeah,
Like, I'm a nerd. We're all most people are nerds.
everyone has something
at
that they
this
nerd out
point,
to.
At
Yeah.
this point, we're all sort of resigned to it. I hope that's not a. I hope people don't hear that as a pejorative anymore. But there's a rhythm to nerdiness. Like there's like if you get somebody started or you get somebody juiced up on the thing that they're a nerd about.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm to it, and it's sort of. The problem with comedy is there's not really a rhythm to like. People enjoy comedy as a comedy, as the singular thing we're all here to do when I'm out talking to people.
Yeah.
They enjoy it in different ways. A lot of people get their comedy from television and television alone, and so when they find themselves in a live comedy situation, they don't know what the rules are or how to act. They want to say stuff, and even if you can stop them from saying stuff after the show, they got a lot to tell you about what you did and about why you're doing it wrong, because you don't do it like whoever they like. And it's just a whole lot of just listening to somebody talk about the thing I know more about than anything else in the world. Like, I know more about stand-up comedy than I know about anything else in the world.
Right. Although you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to other stuff, but we'll get into all the your Disney or wrestling, but the
this
comedy,
is the thing I know.
Yeah,
and I whether I know a lot about it or not, it's the thing I know the best.
Right, and I mean you've done your due diligence into you've made your decision to go into comedy,
right?
So you know all your stuff about it. Just like with comics, I could give you the history of comics, like at a drop of a hat, and do the.
And when you sign up to teach second grade science, or fifth grade science, you're signing up to have the same conversation over and over and over again. Like that's what you signed up to do.
Yeah, I
signed up to tell jokes. Mm-hmm. I didn't sign up to have the same conversation over and over and over and over and over again. And you just have to deal with it. I mean, look, it sounds like I'm complaining. It is actually more fun than anything I've ever
where
tried
I'm trying
to
to guide you on this one is what is your favorite out? Like what's your favorite like?
Oh, my favorite way to get out of a conversation?
Yeah, or what's the best way to like?
By the way, this works 100% of the time.
And everything's super polite. Like never like, oh, fire, and then you run. Like
guys, I think I might be about to crap my pants. I'm gonna. That works 100% of the time.
I suppose that
nobody wants to stand there while you crap your pants.
I don't think that I could quite pull that one off here.
No.
Yeah.
No, people know you too well, and A, people know you too well, and B, this is like your domain.
Yeah.
You didn't stray so far from the bathroom that you messed something up.
Yeah. Well, and there are certain tells that we'll kind of give each other to try to help work around that kind of stuff, and then sometimes we have people that won't leave other customers. Code. Yeah, but sometimes we have other someone will come in and they won't leave other customers alone. So we have ways of trying to all right, well, I'm going to jump in front of this bullet.
I'm going to go jump on this grenade.
Yeah. So
man, that feels like that'd be a nightmare.
It can be.
I'm not sure if I have the wherewithal to put myself in that position.
Hey, man,
and knowingly walk into
Well, it's so different now because when I first started, we didn't have to worry about online reviews or any of that stuff. It was got rid of that guy for forever. Because when I first started, I could out-weird the weirdos.
Right.
Like one time, this guy wouldn't stop talking to me, so I just got out a roll of duct tape and just started taping my hand until the whole thing was just gone. And he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Man, preservation, am I right?" But you can't do that now
That's
because
pretty sure. Because that guy will go and write like a
it's
screed on Yelp about why
So
you're having like a weird hand fetish that don't take your kids over there. It's weird.
Right. So you can't do that anymore.
Well, the hardest part about comedy, I mean, one of the hardest things about comedy was learning that what I think is funny is not funny. Well, like there was a period in my life where I just had to deal with it. I just had to deal with, I can't just say things that I think are funny the way I want to say them.
Right.
Because the audience is like, boo, you weirdo.
Well, but I mean, part of performing, part of anything that you do in front of people is reading the room.
Right.
Like
and you know what? There's not a good way. This is going to sound like a lie, but it's true. There's no way to get better at that. The only way to get better at it is to just do it.
I don't know.
And you just have to do it and do it and do it and do it and do it. Like
I think that there's some subtlety to reading.
I feel like there is, but I don't think that you can learn it. I don't think that you can learn it intentionally. I don't think that you can walk away from every time you get on stage and go home and go like, well, they liked this and they didn't like that, and they liked it when I paused and they didn't like the thing that I did. That's just stuff that has to seep into your brain somehow.
Interesting.
I feel like the way you get better as a comic is write more. Just keep writing and write more stuff and keep saying different stuff. Just keep trying. And it's like being a pilot. You get 100,000.
I don't know, but you can
10,000
study that. Yeah,
you're just better now.
Yeah,
you just are better.
It's just experience. Just kind of
just makes you better.
Yeah, experience sands you down, knocks off the rough edges.
And because Oklahoma City is a weird place to do stand-up comedy.
It really is.
It's a comedy desert. It's a weird entertainment desert. There's not a lot going on. And
Sir Hoyt Axton said that this Oklahoma City is the cultural center of the universe. Just saying.
Hoyt Axton is an idiot because it is not in any sense. There's not a way you can say that and make it true.
I don't know, man.
But there's an open mic in the city every night of the week,
right?
Except for the weekends, because who does open mics on the weekends? But
silly thing. Who wants to be entertained on Saturday or Sunday?
Let's don't try to stretch the definition of entertainment to include comedy open mics. That's not what those are. But like there's a lot of different kinds of rooms. There's like a bar in a college town.
Sure, but I mean, there's knowing that you're going into, say, what's the actual comedy club?
The Looney Bin.
Looney Bin. Going into the Looney Bin, you kind of know what. Hey, people are definitely there for comedy, as opposed to going to Othello's. People are going there to eat, and hey, comedy will be going on.
Comedy might happen, and
so then you kind of know. Hey, I can kind of get away with more of the hey, this is comedy for people who are like totally into comedy, and then here's hey,
it's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird at the Looney Bin. Everyone is there to see comedy on purpose. And they even paid for it.
Yeah.
So you have them. You have their attention. They want you to succeed.
Right.
They came in here looking to have a good time. And if you struggle, they don't have as good a time. So it's a little easier in that sense.
Yeah.
Like everyone's on the same page. You do an open mic at Othello's, which is an Italian restaurant in Norman, Oklahoma, in a college town on a Tuesday night. There's a solid chance that a third of the people in the room when the show starts didn't realize there was going to be comedy.
Yeah.
And so they're not rooting for you. If anything, their first reaction is, why won't these people shut up?
Yeah, they're like,
so I can eat my garlic knots.
Yeah.
This is stupid. Why are they doing this to themselves? And then when it starts to go sideways, I mean, watching someone fail at comedy is like, what are you doing?
See,
why are you doing this to us?
I always love that so much. But that's just the I guess.
And there's some open mics where the audience is actively rooting against you.
See, I never root against, but I love just seeing how someone deals with that.
Well, the show that we do here, the Comedy Fight League, is a roast battle show.
Yeah.
But it's a roast battle show that's couched in like these professional wrestling sort of tropes.
Yeah.
So there are good guys and bad guys and storylines and inside of that are legitimate roast battles where two comics insult each other and judges decide who was better at it or whatever. Well, that all happens here in the store. One of the things that's magical about that show is sometimes it comes dangerously close to completely coming off the rails.
Yeah.
And not being good. And there's something magical about that tension that kind of gets created in the room when everybody's going, is this gonna is someone gonna fix this?
Yeah.
And then, they caught it before it hit the ground. Okay, oh, yay. Like there's something exhilarating about it.
Interesting.
But and I like that too in a comic. I like watching a comic just almost hit the ground and can't figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I would rather see them, strike out, time after time, and man, when they I want them to be Babe Ruth, like,
yep.
Oh man, look, they're striking out. Oh man, that's the funniest thing that will be said the entire night.
And that's sort of how I think a lot of times that's how comedy works. A lot of times comedy is, if you're always good, you're not great.
Yeah.
Like a comic who's always good,
Right.
Consistency is not necessarily.
I mean, there is something to be said. Like
Sure.
if you're booking a comic for a gig, you want consistency.
It to be good.
But if you're doing actual stand up, I think you're right.
We should draw a distinction. There is my act as it is prepared.
Yeah.
I want that to consistently be good every time I go up and talk into a microphone. But when I'm trying to work stuff out, when I'm going to open mics and trying new material and trying to build an act, that needs to fail more often than it succeeds.
Okay, so that's where you're going to the gym,
right?
Interesting,
right? Because you don't get to genius. You're not going to say something genius until you've said every stupid thought you've had. Like you spit out every stupid thought you've ever had, and then one of them just happens to be that's brilliant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When do you think you made it? Like, what was your big break moment? Like,
we're not even close.
Okay. What I mean is, like, you started OKC comedy. Like, I
can tell you, there was a night. There used to be an old Jewish comic here in Oklahoma City named Stan Silliman. He passed away a few years ago. And he was one of my favorite people in the world. I mean, he was just the best. I have a story to tell about Stan Silliman that we might go down a rabbit hole a little bit. But I'll bring us back. I remember there was a night that I just ate it real hard at the Looney Bin, and it was kind of embarrassing. And I said the F word a bunch, and that's against the rules. It was just one of those moments where you just mess everything up. Like, you just do everything wrong. I did a set at the Looney Bin. I said the F word a bunch of times. I came off the stage. The owner lady was like, "You want to guess how many times you said the F word on my stage tonight?" And I was like, "I don't know, 10?" She was like, 13. By the way, here's Jeff. He's the guy that books all the rest of the Looney Bins. Good luck with that. And it was just one of those nights where you were like, it felt like I had all thumbs. I couldn't do anything. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm fine with this. Like, if I end up like Stan Silliman, where I am in my, I guess 70s at the time, and I'm just tooling around Oklahoma City doing all the open mics, getting gigs, and driving to Louisiana to do a set for 75. Like, if I'm that guy in my 70s, I'm probably gonna be all right.
Huh.
Like that's just there's
a beauty to that.
Yeah. I mean, look, do I want to succeed? Sure. Do I care if I'm ever on TV? I don't think so. Do I care if I mean, comedy is not as much what I do as it is just who I am now. Like, okay. I just will always do this. And I remember the night I realized, Well, I hope it works, but because I'm just gonna always do this. Like we're stuck doing this now.
That's awesome.
Let me tell you a story about Stan. Stan didn't care if the audience was having fun. I'm sure he would say that he did, but he didn't care. There was something so, I think something so comic about him. He was a comic, and he was going to do his material, and he was going to do it the way he does it. And we did a Christmas party together. We did a Christmas party in a hotel ballroom for the officers and family of the people at Tinker Air Force Base. And there are like 300 people, 350 people, something like that, in this hotel ballroom. And we're in the front of the room. So like behind us is the kitchen. And then there's the whole ballroom. And the way out of this room is all the way across the room. And there are exits behind everybody. And Stan ate it. I mean, ate it hard. Like
no one laughed at anything.
It was excruciating. And I was just like, just quit, just stop. And I could just see like his mind working, and every choice that he was making on stage, I was like, no. He was just demanding that they laugh at him on his terms, and it just never came together. And then, sometimes that happens. And I just watched him go down in flames. And I was so mad because now I was like, all right, now, ladies and gentlemen, BradChad Porter. So I get up there and I get like halfway through a joke. I don't even get like the premise of a joke. I don't even get like the setup established. And I see somebody in the back, whoever's in charge of the event, like give the karaoke guy the end this, please. Sign, and the karaoke guy comes and grabs the microphone and just starts karaoke, and I'm just standing there like, and now I got to walk all the way across this room with 350 people just looking at me like, what did you do?
That's terrible.
Every step, I was more angry. Like I was just getting madder and madder and madder and madder, and I pushed the door open, and I walked up to Stan. Finger in the air, like I'm coming for justice. And I get to Stan and I open my mouth and he goes, boy, they did not like your opener. It's like, you son of a...
That's beautiful. Yeah, I had very limited interaction with him. Right before he passed, he was going through all the medical stuff and
right, yeah.
They're trying to raise money, and it was right before one of the New World Comic Con, and you and I had that harebrained idea that we were going to dress him up like Stan Lee. And have him,
I remember that.
Sign his, because he had his own books, and we were just going to make a sign like meet Stanley and like mess with the font. Just yeah. So, yeah, it was It's probably in everyone's best interest that we didn't.
Yeah. Some ideas are best left on the show.
Yeah. But it would have been hilarious.
It would have been funny for us, which at the end of the day, what else matters?
Really? Right. There's a lot of stuff that I'll do around here. Like half of superhero school is like, what can I do to make me happy?
For me.
Yeah. Well, luckily, a lot of people think that, my same stuff is funny.
Sure.
So I go with it. Real quick, you bring in big names, talent from time to time. Which one of those shows was the first to make it where you're like, we can do this on a semi-regular?
The very first one we tried, the very first show we did was Doug Benson. We brought him to town in 2010. Was the first time we tried to produce a show. What we actually started to do was we were pairing comics up, renting out a theater and trying to sell tickets so that people could see us and we could get some experience doing comedy in a theater. Mm-hmm. And because it's different from doing it in a bar or a club or whatever, and also sort of try to generate some buzz and no one would sell tickets or help people sell tickets, and that just wasn't working. So we thought, well, what we'll do is we'll start booking comics that people will pay to see, and then we'll just book local comics in front of them, and it'll be the same, except for, they're not paying to see us, but who cares? We're still getting to do our time in front of a nice big audience and learning how to figuring it all out.
Yeah.
So we brought Doug Benson to town, and at the time, Spencer Hicks was a partner, and he was working for the governor, and he worked it out so that we made it Doug Benson Day in the state of Oklahoma that day, and it was that became a thing, and so for 5 years we did Doug Benson Day every year.
That's awesome.
Because the very first thing we did worked, and then a lot didn't. But enough of them work so that we keep doing it.
So you don't have to give names directly, but we can allude to their other work if you want to. Who is absolutely the worst person that you've either dealt with or brought in?
The worst person?
Yeah, like I mean, there's
that's a race to the bottom with stand-up comics. I mean,
well, there's a story that comes to mind that you told me, but I don't,
I don't want to crap on anybody. I mean, I've been canceled on. There are a lot of dudes who, there were a lot of dudes, if you brought them in like Maury Povich style and sat them down, I'd have a lot of things to say. So I'm not going to pretend like there aren't any stories to tell here. I will say this. Someday I might write a book just full of, it'll be for a very specific audience. I might write a book for people who were comedy nerds between 2007 and 2017. And it'll be extraordinarily interesting to those people. But I just don't want to.
Can't spill the tea on that one.
Here's the thing. Because here's the thing. More than once, and I'll explain to you why, because I'm not just trying to wuss out of this. More than once, I have been in a thing with a comic, especially famous comics, because they don't know who I am. Like, I know them, and they know me until the check clears, and then they forget about me until it's time to do another show.
Yeah.
So there have been a lot of times when I've said terrible things to a human being, and they've said terrible things to me, and we parted ways, and then a couple years later we were all like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So it feels like there's never a good time for me to go on a podcast and be like, "So-and-so's a big piece of garbage."
Well,
because 3 months from now, so-and-so and I might decide we want to make some money together.
So we can take this out if you really want to.
Well, I can look. There is more than a few minutes of footage of me waffling.
No. Pauly Shore.
I did. I mean, he.
We can cut that if you want, but.
I don't have anything bad to say about Pauly Shore.
Yeah.
Pauly Shore's never done anything bad to me. Like, I've never had a bad experience with Pauly Shore. I've had a weird experience with Pauly Shore.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
I've never had anything bad happen, though. Like, he didn't. Like, I got a call one time. Okay. This is so weird. I was in Beaver, Oklahoma. I don't want to talk about why. It doesn't matter. It's the middle of nowhere. It's barely a town. And I was at a Love's gas station.
Yeah.
A Love's country store. And in that Love's country store was a Subway. So I was in line at a Subway in a Love's country store in Beaver, Oklahoma, and my phone rings, and I answer it. And it's just a guy. It's like, "Hey, my name is Adam. I've got Pauly Shore on the line. Would you like to talk to him?" And I was like, yeah, let's do that. I'll talk to Pauly Shore. And this, mind you, this is 2011, 2012. somewhere around in there. And so I'm just on the phone with Pauly Shore, and I'm like, "Hey, Pauly, give me just 1 second. I have a meatball sub. I'm gonna get a meatball sub. Now I'm gonna get the foot long on white. What's up, man?" And then he's like, he pitching me the idea of doing shows in Oklahoma City, and he just, we weren't coming to terms. Like, so, we were just having a conversation where just, I didn't want to, he wanted this, I wanted that. We were kind of going back and forth, but he kept trying to tell me who he was. Like like between times,
Son-in-Law? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Between times, it was like, you know who my mom is. You've seen Son-in-Law. Like, I was like, yeah, dude, I know who you are. The problem isn't.
I will say, anytime you have to do the, hey, do you know who my mom is? Like,
I promise.
You lose all credibility.
that sounds crappier than it is. But
I mean, to be fair, like, she's like a juggernaut of
yeah,
comedy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he wasn't. He wasn't trying to big time me. He was legitimately concerned I didn't know who I was talking to.
Right.
And it turns out when you're standing in line at a Subway, it's hard to convince Pauly Shore you know who he is. Like, I don't know how to tell you this. I mean, without just listing your IMDb credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were in the Army now.
Yeah.
Andy Dick. Is Andy Dick fun? What do you want me to say that would convince you that we're on the same page about this? Just not the money.
Yeah. Yeah, didn't he want something like 4 shows or 5?
We don't get into that.
Oh, okay, well, I'll be over here then with my insider information. Okay, so you'd kind of touched on this earlier. If you could like make it big and break it, would you sell out?
Absolutely, immediately.
Like you'd leave the state.
I am
like
eager to sell out.
Like you'd be like, hey guys.
You know what? People are so mean to Larry the Cable Guy, and I'm sure that guy's a weirdo. Like, I'm positive he is. You make a certain amount of money, and you're just a weirdo. There's no way to not be.
I mean, you've heard his real voice, right?
Sure.
That's weird. Yeah, for those who have never looked into it, like, get on YouTube, like, Larry the Cable Guy's real voice. It's jarring.
Larry the Cable Guy was a stand-up comic named Dan Whitney, and he was really good. He was a really good stand-up comic, and he toured the country, and he did his thing, and he, that's what he did. And then at some point, you realize I'm not going to be Jerry Seinfeld. I'm just not. Like, what I do is not going to be what the world looks at and goes, hey. And he does this character, and someone offered him the opportunity to do that character and make $1 bajillion at it, and there's not a single one of us that wouldn't do it. Because I'm a stand-up comic. And if, and I'm never going to be Jerry Seinfeld. So if you said you want to quit doing comedy and start a second career as, Steve the plumber.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Please.
Fair enough.
Give me the $1 billion. I have done plenty of crappy one-nighters in Lincoln, Nebraska, or Rush Center, Kansas, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana for $75. I drove to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, did 45 minutes of comedy, drove home for $75.
See,
one time
all
I
you're doing
drove.
now is you're just telling people that you're really good at making bad decisions.
I don't do that today, Fred. Do not call me and try to get me to come to Baton Rouge, Louisiana for $75. I won't do it.
$76, however. Sorry.
I mean, are you going to feed me, or am I on my own
Mac
food
and
way?
cheese. It'll be like Kraft mac and cheese.
One time I drove to Chicago to audition at a club, and I was going to get my first week of middling money. My first feature week at a club. My first week being the middle guy, not being the first guy,
right?
But being the middle guy. It was gonna be my first week. I went up there. It's 12 hours one way. I did 15 minutes of comedy. Guy said, "I'll hire you. I'm gonna book you at the end of the summer. We're getting some renovations done, and I'll book you at the end of the summer." And I was like, "Perfect." He gave me a date. I drove home. Didn't get paid nothing, but I got a week worth of work out of it, and that's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And about 2 weeks before my date, they call and say the club is going out of business. After 33 years of business.
Oh, man.
2 weeks before my date.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So, yes.
Okay.
Offer me the chance to be Steve the plumber, and I will jump on it.
Interesting.
I have done plenty of comedy to nobody. I'm fine with that. I would be fine to retire from stand-up comedy and become Steve the plumber.
So, who was like the absolute coolest comic that you've dealt with?
I mean, like Kyle Kinane is the best dude.
Interesting.
I don't, everybody we've worked with has been so great. But Kyle Kinane is, I mean, he's a lot of fun.
I felt so bad for him. Like, one of the shows that he was here for, I actually got to attend. And typically I don't laugh out loud. Like, I'm a super quiet laughter, laugh at. Like,
a lot of people are that way. Yeah.
Just kind of how I am.
Just kind of,
not even that. Like,
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll like blat out a laughter, but it takes a lot. And he was hilarious. He was great. But the seat that you had for me was like front row, dead center, right? So I was his eyes, like I was his visual.
He just kept looking at you all night.
Well, because like when you're talking to the audience, you
pick out four or five people.
Like I was
dead center.
Dead center. It was I'm a big dude. So like I took up a lot of real estate as far as the visual thing. Yeah. So he kept looking at me, and I kept not.
So all night he thinks he's not doing well with the middle of the room.
Right, and then I realized, I'll just open my mouth for like, yeah. So I started doing that, and he like I could see him like relax.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
I won't put you on the spot and say who's the worst, but how's this? What are some things that people have done, like big timers, that you wish that they would absolute?
I'll tell you where I can take this, because I don't mind at all talking trash about agents.
Okay.
I've had people's agents be terrible. There was a guy that used to call me all the time. And he still does whenever we book a show with the comic that he represents. But when I get a phone call from this guy, it's always from his assistant Chris. So the call comes in from Chris, and I answer the phone, and it's like, hey, "This is Chris. I've got so and so on the line for you." Okay, and then click, you wait. Hey, what are we talking about? Yeah, dude, I don't know. You called me. I know you're busy, but that doesn't change the way things work. You have to tell me what we're talking about, because I answered the phone, idiot. We had a guy send us a writer, right? Doug Stanhope's agent sent us a writer, and it was just full of like, it was the weirdest stuff. I don't know if you know, Doug Stanhope is just constantly drunk. Is just a mess of a human being. He's brilliantly funny. Probably 2/3 of the things that come out of his mouth are wrong in ways that are hard to describe. Like he's just that guy.
Yeah.
Right. And his agent, we got a writer from his agent, and it was just full of like.
I guess for those that don't know, the writer is like things that someone requires to have before
right,
they. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times the writer, and especially with a comic, because there's one performer.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of technical stuff to deal with.
Make sure they have a sandwich and some Coke.
Yeah. Make sure that there's water backstage. Make sure that he or she only drinks this kind of soda. So don't waste your time with other stuff. Just get this, and you'll be fine.
Cool.
No alcohol if they're sober, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, the writer people make jokes about it, the brown M&M stuff, but you know,
it's to make sure that
it's also they're super helpful, and we use them every single show. But his writer was just full of like organic almonds from exactly this place, and some kind of tea that we could only find at like a tea shop. Like there was, like we had to go to there is a tea shop in a shop that sells tea.
Yeah.
We had to go to that place and get it. Like it was just all this really complicated stuff that did not sound like Doug Stanhope. And I was just blown away. We were just like, what is going on? Because we're just thinking this is like, oh, well, apparently he's just like not in real life the way he is. This is our first time working with him or whatever.
Yeah.
And he comes in and he was like, he didn't say anything for the longest time. We just noticed nothing was being nothing was being disturbed. And he was like, finally, after the show, we're all kind of standing around talking after the show or whatever backstage. And he's like, guys, why did you get all this garbage? And we were like, what? And he was like, I tried not to say anything, but I'm hungry. And there's like organic nuts and like, what is this? And we were like, here's your writer. Here's the writer that your agency. And he was like, that son of a bitch. Called him. He was like, you asshole. And you could just hear him over there like, nah.
Oh, that's kind of good.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
If we'd have spent a ton of money on it, I'd have been horked off. But he did it pretty skillfully. Like we didn't spend a lot of money. We didn't spend a lot of time.
So with the writers and like when you book someone, do you have like up front? Do you like, hey, we can spend this much on the writer, or like is this part of the contract? Or?
Yeah, you usually work it out.
Okay, so now
just work out the details of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, will the writer come out of like their pay, or will it come out of?
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends. It depends on how you structure the.
Gotcha. Like if they want like Goldschlag or something dumb like that, like it's
Yeah. Well, most of the time,
if they're like, I need 20 bottles.
Most of the time, it's negligible.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's money we spend anyway. So
okay, fair enough.
So it's never been an issue.
Huh.
I've never looked at someone's writer and been like, well, this is going to be a real problem. They're always easy.
Let's see. So,
and most people too, like a lot of people have rules in their contract.
Like
Janine Garofalo had a bunch of rules.
Like what?
A door that locks on the dressing room and no one should talk to her and leave her alone. And we were like, oh no, she's going to be a real jerkwad.
Yeah.
And then she showed up and was brilliant and was like hanging out with people behind the venue.
So it was a just in case kind of thing.
Because she's a political lightning rod and she's got a, if stuff starts to go down, we had to be prepared to make sure nobody could get to her.
Okay.
So it made a lot of sense, but that was a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
She ended up being one of my favorite people.
I am so sad that I was unable to troll her the way that I was planning. Like, Daria changed my life.
Just pretend like she was 10 people she wasn't.
No, just that she was Daria. Like, like in high school, like I was Daria, and like you helped me. Just put all that on her.
I can't imagine. I mean.
Because like I'm really good at selling the lie. Like
yeah.
I can keep the straight face for the most part through most of that awful stuff. Like, I can sit through your awkwardness.
Right.
And
I am not. If I'm doing a bit and the second I feel somebody get uncomfortable, I crumble like a cheap tent. I'm just like, it's a bit. I swear, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't want you to be uncomfortable because I'm trying to be funny.
So the worst is like when like anytime I get new employees or like someone starts hanging out at the store, more often they have a hard time knowing if I'm joking or not.
Right.
Because like sometimes I mean something. Sometimes it's that no, we're just messing with you. Calm down. Yeah.
Right. And most of my friends are the same.
Yeah.
Most of the jerks in my life.
So is there anything that you would recommend to other people looking to get into stand-up and say, hey, don't do this? Or like don't do this aspect of it. Not don't do stand-up comedy, but like
Well, the first and best advice about stand-up comedy is don't do it.
Oh, you see, that's what I tell everyone when they're like, "Hey, I want to start my own comic store." I was like, "Don't."
Just read your comics and be happy.
Yeah, it's that not that I am challenging the competition or like it's not that you don't want to go up against other comics. It's that you don't know how much hard work goes into all this.
Right.
Like
I tell people when they start every time. Every time I talk to somebody who I try every single time to say the same thing. You got to do it 5 or 6 times, because the first 2 or 3 times you do comedy, you learn nothing. You don't know anything still. Sometimes you just suck, and that's because you suck.
Yeah,
because you've never done it before and you suck at it, and you have to. That's what it is. Sometimes you do really well because all of your friends came and were very supportive, and it's just like telling stories in your living room. But you don't realize that when those friends aren't in the room,
like
there's a whole lot of quiet.
Real, yeah.
There's a whole lot of quiet without them. And so, I tell people you do it 5, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. You get it. You do it a bunch.
Yeah.
And then you either, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. I don't want to have anything to do with this, or it ruins your life. It absolutely ruins you.
Interesting. I mean, do you have any advice as far as like, hey, don't let that bother you, like don't get a complex about that, or do you think that someone should hold on to that and like kind of use that?
I honestly believe that getting better, if you started in comedy, getting better is about air miles. It's about getting on stage and doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it'll feel like you're on a treadmill and nothing's happening and nothing changes and you're not getting any better. And then one day you wake up and you're better. I mean, one day you wake up and you just are better at it, and you can just tell. I had I don't know how to tell this story because there's so many parts to it. We worked once with the Sklar brothers, and they said, to the horror of the comics that were working on the show with them, it takes 10 years to get good at this. It takes 10 years. You might get on TV before 10 years. You might make money. You might make a ton of money at it before 10 years. But if you're good at this, it takes 10 years. It takes 10 years to be a good comic.
Interesting.
And I am about 10 years in, and I'm not there. I get it. I get what they're saying, though. Like, I know, I get it. I know what they mean by that. And it's I think if you're new to comedy, you hear that and you're like, nah, bull. I'm better than that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you probably should feel that way, but you're not, and you'll figure it out. You'll figure out.
Yeah, with anything, you'll get to a point, and you'll learn how much you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. It is a journey into how much I don't know about what I'm doing, and we started right away when we started doing comedy. It was about 12 of us that started doing comedy together in Oklahoma City.
Right.
And it was like an influx of comics. There wasn't enough time. We had one club you could get on every other week. That's not nearly enough to get good. Yeah. We started open mics and showcases, and we had a place where we could do 10 minutes, and we had a place where we could do 30 minutes. And
that's one of the reasons that I try to support the OKC comedy as much as we can, because y'all are adding to the culture of the city.
One would hope
by having another thing to go do. Because
there's a community. I mean, we have the funniest person in Oklahoma City contest, and we've never had a year where we had less than 50 people compete. There are 50 comics in the city at any one given time. Yeah, and that's with a ton of people getting better and leaving for New York and LA. And I mean, we've got Justin Smith is in New York, and Leah Kajanian is in Los Angeles, and Derek Smith is in Chicago, and Nathan Anderson is in New York, and Madison Allen is in New York, and we've got all of these comics that have got picked up and moved off, and
it's kind of weird to see
and we still have a pretty constant 50 comics or so in the city, and this is a tiny little comedy community.
Yeah, and it's really weird to see kind of like who will ghost in, stick around for a long time, and then just kind of ghost out, and then like who's kind of come back, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's oh great, they're back, and then it's that was just a. That was just
we have a lot of comics that have gone on to places and failed and come back.
Yeah,
which is super fun. Those are my favorite.
That's hilarious. So typically, I close out the podcast with some store stories, and I figure what better thing to talk about than the times that before we had any structure, just trying to do comedy shows up here.
Oof.
Which
the first time we did comedy here, woof.
Yeah.
Was you do the all night sale on Free Comic Book Day?
It was 2 years before Free Comic Book Day hit.
So it wasn't what it became.
Yeah, we were doing 24-hour sales, and people were like, "Oh, cool, that's awesome. Sure.
See you at a reasonable hour
yeah.
at 10.
Have fun being sleepy."
Yeah.
I didn't realize I need to structure this, put in the work, and do all this stuff to make it this thing.
Right.
It was if I'm open, people will show up.
Right.
Yeah.
Turns out they didn't.
Yeah.
And I know that because we did 2 shows.
Yep.
We did 2 shows in the middle of the night.
Yep.
The concept being there would be people here shopping for comics because you had a sale going on.
Yeah.
And maybe we could get some of our idiot fans to come out. Like some of the dummies that are just really into what we do.
Yeah. Well, and
I say dummy with the utmost.
Of course. Well, and
affection.
I was so beside myself with the comics in the comic store.
Right.
Yeah. To this day, anytime that happens, I'm like,
one of my favorite photographs from comedy.
Oh, that is the story I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So we had a customer who was in the military and was just he was constantly called away, but anytime he was here, he was here, he loves this place, and we always brought his son, and his son was just a store rat, just always up here, loved everything, totally. He was in with both feet. He loved it so much that he was at the time we had done the store mascot Roblox, he was like, I want to do that someday. I was like, I could make you a suit there. So it was Roblox Jr., and he was 7. But his dad was super chill with everything and let him hang out, and he stuck around for the comedy show that we had.
3 in the morning.
Yeah, 3 in the morning. We had 3 people attend.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
him being one of them.
And he was one of them. He was what, 10?
He
9?
was 7.
He was 7.
Yeah. So you're up over where the new comics, the store was rearranged differently. Everything was running north south at the time, so we had this big gap of space up by the new books. So he's sitting on the stool 5 feet from you while you're doing he's obscenely close. There's
a photograph of me doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah,
into the face of a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it serious. I decided,
you're
we're
there
just doing this.
Doing the jokes that you would do at 3 a.m.
Yep.
Which were not clean.
Nope.
Yeah. And because you everyone talked to his dad beforehand was
they're like, do you want us to do this differently?
Yeah.
And I was like, nah.
And he was like, no, I mean, I let him listen to whatever, and if he has questions, they talk
Yeah.
He was like, I'm
guaranteed they had conversation. Not just because of me.
But
I talk mostly about pooping in my pants. You can get that. He didn't have any questions about it. He was maybe what's wrong with that man, Daddy? But I wasn't the only comic on the bill.
Yeah.
I promise he had questions at the end of the night.
So yeah. So you all graciously did it 2 years in a row of no one.
Nothing.
And then that third time out was that's the time that Free Comic Book Day hit.
Right.
And you all showed up and you're like, what is going on?
What are we gonna do?
Yeah. Because the store was just packed.
Yeah.
At 3 a.m. I was like, I don't know what I did, but I'm very proud.
You guys don't run anybody off.
Yeah. So I think Spencer that year actually did, but
of course he did.
Of
course he did.
Yeah. But he's hilarious. Anyway, So yeah, and then you all have had other shows where there was the group out of I think Colorado that showed
the
up.
Fine Gentlemen's Club.
Yeah, they were great to have.
Yes.
Yeah, no one believed me when I was like, no, we have like other comics coming.
Yeah. It was I mean, that was a really good show.
Yeah, well, because
It was like wall to wall.
yeah, we had to start late, and then a lot of people thought that it started like an hour later. So like they were just cool and were like, yes, we have to leave very soon, but
Let's do it.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, and yeah, it morphed into James Nim did his storytelling show here, and then now we do Comedy Fight League,
yeah.
which is a ton of fun.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to end on is the Comedy Fight League. We do it once a month up here, and it's like pro wrestling based insult comedy.
It's like
towards each other.
Yeah, well,
Like,
yeah. See, when you start to break it down, it sounds really stupid, but it's not. It became fashionable a few years ago to start doing roast battle shows, and everybody's familiar with the concept of a roast, where you have one like a guest of honor, and everybody makes jokes about insults the people making jokes, and then insults the man of honor, and then it ends with but we love you, and blah blah blah. We've seen it on Comedy Central. It goes way back to they did the
Friars Club,
year,
the
the Friars Club and Dean Martin roasts and all of those. Everybody's kind of familiar with what that is.
Yeah,
it became fashionable a few years back to start pairing up comics against each other and doing roast battles, so that you only have two comics and they insult each other, and then judges would decide who was better at insulting the other. Part of the problem with that format is, unless these are famous comics, when you're in the audience, you don't know who you're talking about. And so you have to be really clever about the way you do jokes. You have to be clever. You have to point out things that are readily
right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to talk about how someone looks, the way their voice sounds. You have to say things that are obviously true, or feel true, and it's a little more difficult than when everybody knows who Hugh Hefner is. We can all just make jokes at Hugh Hefner's expense,
right?
And so I've always felt like those roast battle shows were they kind of worked, and they're a lot of fun if you get into the spirit of it. But it just feels a little.
Right. There's something that's missing.
There's something missing. Something missing. So we added an element.
And the format has really added quite a bit to it. And I'm not really a pro wrestling fan, but like I get it. It's something tangible that you all can kind of get into. Like this last one we did an actual like cage match.
Yes, it was a cage match where we locked the comics in a cage.
Yeah.
To no end, like in a real cage match. The idea is you can't get out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah. What are you gonna? It's a comic store full of it. Yeah.
But it was a cool visual.
Yeah.
It was a cool visual.
Yeah. People didn't believe it, and then they showed up and like
there's a cage.
Yeah.
Why do you have a cage?
Yeah. Almost everyone came in and said that. Why is that the cage? Yeah. Yep. So yeah. For those interested. Stay tuned to the Facebook page, the Twitters.
Absolutely. Comedy Fight League is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. It's called Comedy Fight League.
Yep.
We are the only thing called Comedy Fight League. So, you can find us at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Comedy Fight League, and you can get tickets to that show every month. Advanced tickets are available at ticketstorm.com.
Cool. Yeah, and man, it is such a good time.
Yeah,
Yeah, this last one is easily the best show, and we have some awesome things coming up on the next one. I don't want to give anything away because it's just kind of too good.
I'll tell you the next Comedy Fight League. We will have done a little arc. Heath Huffman first. Heath Huffman roasted a microphone, but not just like any microphone. It was one of those square.
Like the Sinatra style,
old school microphone, because those are in every comedy poster,
but no one ever uses
those. They're terrible for comedy. They're not. They don't work that way.
Yeah.
So he roasted that, and clearly he beat it because
It's an
can't-
inanimate
it
object,
can't
yeah.
speak. And then he roasted a vest.
Yep.
Because that's also kind of a villain in comedy. So this last show, he roasted a vest and won pretty handily.
Yeah.
And then at our next show, he's going to roast the light.
Yeah.
The light that comics get when when their time is done. He's going to roast the light.
So yeah. So like it's not only just comic versus it's like
I feel like I made it sound not fun. That what I just described sounds less fun than it actually was.
we'll let the voice of God determine that. If he doesn't like it,
One of my favorite things that I've ever seen was Heath Huffman roasting that microphone.
I just wait for him to roast the brick wall behind the comics. Yeah, it's
Season
it's
3.
absolutely ridiculous. It's a great time. Definitely come out and see it. I think we should call that the show.
Okay.
Brad, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you for having me. This
yeah.
was a blast. I mean, I feel like, I don't know how interesting this is to the listener. I feel like you and I just had the same conversation we would have had without them.
Pretty much. I mean, just without my notes.
I hope that was interesting for someone.
Yeah, hopefully. If so, leave your comments, questions, other things that you'd like us to do or see on future podcasts.
And if not, keep it to yourself.
I guess there's that too. Brad, thanks for being here. Special thanks to Brad Reed of Nerds to Men fame. You can catch the Nerds to Men podcast every week on Speaker, Stitcher. Brad, what am I trying to say here?
iTunes, Spotify, all of it. Facebook's a good place to start.
Yeah, smoke signals, certain ones are in Morse code
Yeah.
that you can.
Those guys
Decipher.
with the flag.
Yeah, it's a heck of a show. Thank you all for listening. I've been Buck Berlin. We'll see you next week.